Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 44 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. Today, we have an amazing special guest joining us, Lyndsey Bolus. And Lyndsey joined my membership site, Roots Personal Finance, back in July of 2019. And it's crazy to think about this because it seems like it was just yesterday. And in just 1 year, check this out, has paid off over $35,000 on a single income. And today, she's going to share how she was able to make this happen in such a short period of time. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, how's everyone doing today? Welcome to today's podcast episode. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad, and we are so excited to have you a part of our show. And I'm even more thrilled to welcome Lyndsey to the show. Lyndsey lives in North Carolina. She is a training manager for a tire company, and she has been working there for about 10 years. And for fun, she takes care of her 3 dogs, Lily, Murphy, and Tucker. And Lyndsey did warn me, if you hear the dogs in the background, that's them, right? She loves to volunteer, and she is on the board for Queen City Honor Flight, where they fly veterans to D.C. for the day to see the monuments and the museums. And those are really cool. They're doing those all over the country. It's pretty awesome that Lyndsey's a part of that. She is also the auxiliary president of the VFW in Indian Trail, and she loves to shoot pigeons at the range. And check this out, guys. We always talk about, getting on the road to financial freedom, being able to live the life that you want, do more of the things that you love. She has a goal of being able to do that every weekend once she reaches financial freedom, which is really, really cool. Lyndsey, welcome to the show. So glad that you are here with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, when we were kind of getting ready to do the interview, I was really excited because we, for those of you who are listening, we talk about, we do our weekly live meetups, and Lyndsey is a regular participant of those live meetups. And about a month ago, I think, Lyndsey was reporting her numbers. I was like, we got to get you on the podcast. And I was so excited that she agreed to come on because, again, Lyndsey's story is going to be proof that, the basic stuff that we're sharing here, the stuff that we're doing inside Roots, I mean, if you want to change your personal finances and your financial life, it's all right there for you. You just got to get started. And it's so awesome that Lyndsey's going to be here. So, Lyndsey, first question I have for you is kind of going back, beyond Roots and even before you became an adult. And we ask this question a lot here on the show, too, especially of our guests. But how did you get raised to kind of think and about money or use money and even debt? And how do you feel that that's, related to maybe your success or maybe some of the challenges that you faced as you became an adult and you started working with money and managing this personal finance stuff?
Well, I think this is a fantastic question to probably ask your people that do come on the podcast because growing up, my parents divorced when I was pretty young. And I was kind of taught at an early age that, my mom she had a notebook, she wrote down figures, she had, groceries, she had all of her buckets that she would normally put things in. When she would do that, I never really saw the background. I never was really taught, okay, you have this set amount that comes in as a paycheck, and then you need to use this and kind of put your money to work for you versus, letting your money work, on you essentially. So I think that was very different growing up. I didn't have the budgeting basic skills that, should have been taught or at least, gone through. Now, I stayed at home until I was 27. So I've made some stupid decisions as a young teenager, buying expensive cars, because I didn't have rent at that point. So I didn't have a clue what it was like to be an adult until I was out in my first apartment. And then it was like, whoa, okay, you got to pay for this and you got to pay for that. So these are the things I would do.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'm with you on the car thing, by the way. When I was 19, maybe even 18, I think 19, I signed up for like almost a $400 truck payment. And I was the same way. I was still living at home, didn't have any rent, and here I signed up for this payment for another 5 years. And looking back, it's just the silly decisions we make at such a young age. But it's, I think it's truth. Like if you're out there, if you have kids, I mean, you really want to think about that, especially when, your kids are just turning into adults. I mean, these companies out there, especially credit card companies, they want them to get into debt and build their credit and do all this. And sometimes those early decisions, it can really set you back a long time if you're not careful. So make sure you're working with your kids on some of this stuff. But Lyndsey, take us back a little bit before you joined Roots, and let us know, like, what were some of the things as an adult that you were struggling with the most that you think, and what ultimately led you to say, you know what, maybe I need to get some help with this stuff to improve my finances?
Yeah, so I can remember probably when I did get out on my own, or even when I lived at home with my mom, credit card companies would send you credit card pamphlets every single minute. It wouldn't be unlike having a stack of credit cards, hey, join us, it's this low, whatever it may be. I was always kind of, at least I thought at that point, I was smart about it. I'd get a credit card and it would have this high balance on it, or it would have this high, amount on it. And I would say, oh, okay, great. I have this amount of credit. I can, spend this. Well, nobody taught me, or like nobody said, hey, you've got to eventually one day pay that off.
Yeah.
Like that's just not like a loan that just sits there. So I think that was the part where, I started living way outside of my means, because I always wanted to keep up with the Joneses, and I always wanted to keep up with the next person. Somebody got something really cool. Marketing is amazing when you really think about it, as far as buy it now. A lot of times I would buy something very quickly and have a buyer's remorse. And then I'd be stuck with it. I would always get the next upgraded phone. I would always get, whatever it may be that was out there that was the next greatest thing. And that was not conducive to trying to even save or trying to pay any of the bills, because it just kept compounding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I commend you for admitting that, because I can't tell you how many people probably live in shame that they're too trying to keep up with the life that they can't afford. And I used to be one of those people, and it took me a long time to actually admit that, to, like, not only to myself, but also to other people. Like, hey, I'm tried to keep up and tried to keep up with, people who were also living outside their means. And it's no wonder why, again, 8 out of 10 people are living paycheck to paycheck right now. But I commend you, because I think getting to that point where you're able to admit that to yourself, like, this is a serious habit issue and behavior issue that I need to change. And I think, and you're about to share what you've been able to do over this past year and a lot of the great wins that you've had. But I think until you get to that point, I don't think you can really have the success, at least that you have had, because those habits are going to drag you back down. They're going to put you back into debt, because they're so strong. I mean, they really, really are. So ultimately, you heard about Roots. So what caused you to say, because, and you've mentioned this before, you had some hesitations about joining, and it's okay if you want to talk about those, because I'm sure other people have had those too. But, it's kind of weird. Like, you can get help with your finances. You can actually, have someone coach you and assist you. You can join a community. We kind of call it the Weight Watchers program for your money, kind of, right? But ultimately, you decided to join. What were some reasons, like, why were you like, okay, I need to do this?
So I had met you at, I can't remember if it was like one of the PR shows that we had, and it was in Charlotte. And I remember coming up to you at the very tail end, and I'm like, this guy is really smart about money. He said some really good things as far as, but I'm not there yet. I'm not sold on this. Like, is this a gimmick? Is this another commercial? Is this just another, blow some smoke kind of a deal? And so for me, I have to like really pick at things and figure it out. And one of the big things that I thought was, why am I going to spend money to get out of debt? And that was the big piece of it. And so, just talking with you through that and kind of figuring out, okay, listen, if you don't have teeth in this, if you don't have some type of, I'm not going to waste this anymore. I'm not going to waste the money to be able to do that. So that's what I just kind of was like, you know what, let me take a leap of faith. I talked to some of the other sister consultants on my team that had gone through, but, it's funny because now they see the totals. They still see, they're on your feed and see all those totals. And they're like, how do you do this? Like, what's going on? It's fantastic. Like, you don't think about it because you see it and, you just go, wow, like, that's a big amount of money when you really put it down on paper. And then it's also kind of a sad piece too, because you look back and you go, gosh, that's $35,000 that could be in my savings account.
Yeah.
Then I look around the house and I go, what was $35,000 worth of whatever I spent? That made it that way. But in all, you can't look at it that way. You just have to kind of take a leap of faith and do it. I haven't looked back since. I signed up for another year with Roots, and
Yep.
For me, it's been fantastic. It's the accountability. I think the big piece that I kind of grew into it was you come in, you're super nervous because you are on this live meetup with people you have no clue who are. The only thing that you can kind of like go with it is to say, okay, these people are all in the same boat as I am. We're all nervous about this. Maybe we don't have the same boat. Maybe it's bigger, smaller. Maybe some of it's sinking. Maybe it's not. But then you kind of gel with some of the people that are in there, and you get really good people that are there to cheer you on and to, and you get Brad. I mean, you get you.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of perspective on how you look at it. I mean, like there's times where I'll reach out, and that's what people don't understand is you're not just some guy like the Wizard of Oz sitting up in behind the screen and making things work.
Right. So. Yeah, we tell people all the time, it's like, I only serve Roots members, and we really do. Like when we're not doing a podcast and we're not doing live meetups, or I'm not, doing anything like on social media or anything, like it's full on like support to our members, and taking budgeting questions and building the emergency funds and overcoming, challenges that you might be facing with debt or whatever it might be. We get questions all the time, and that's strictly who we serve. But you're right. I mean, there are some people that are like that. It's like you really get Brad as the coach, and absolutely you do. So you've had some huge wins though. So going back though, and I know it was a little over a year ago, and sometimes it might be a little bit hard to remember like what were some of the big things, but I know people here are listening to this and they're like, Lyndsey's here. She paid off over $35,000 in 1 year. Like, what did you do to make that happen? So can you remember maybe in the first 2 to 3 months, like what were some of the big kind of light bulb moments for you that really you feel made the biggest difference over this past year in helping you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So, that's a wonderful question, because the biggest thing I think for me was, because I always wanted to keep up with the Joneses, was to say, stay, stop, wait for the 24-hour period. So instead of that impulse buy of looking at something, I might go look at it, but I put it in my shopping cart and then sit on it. And then I think about it and I go back and I say, do I really need that? Is that going to get me, kind of like what your question is that going to get me where I want to be? And then I really think about it and go, it's not going to be worth it. Even if it was a $10 item, I think about, okay, well, that $10 can be then put towards the credit card. And then when you do start getting to that direction of, okay, you get in that mindset. I think it's the 21 days is what they say, like to keep in that mindset. And, so for me, it was like one of those, okay, first month and then second month. And then it was like somewhere probably in like 6 and 7 months, you're just like, oh, this just kind of is boring. Like, why am I doing this? But you still continue to. And I think the other big piece to it too is really just looking at, what did you spend your money on? What was your budget? Like, what was your food? What was, I was known for going out to eat. I'm a single person, so it's harder to make one meal and split it up and then take it for lunches.
Right.
So when you look at that spend, I mean, just for me, for a while there, it was almost $600 a month on just eating out. And it obviously I look like I ate out that much, but it's not good for you either. So.
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned about month 6 and 7 how it got a little boring, and you're right. We talk about this on the show. Like 95% of the stuff that we talk about here isn't the most fun things to do, right? But it's the 5%. It's the cool part. It's the less stress. It's how it benefits your life. That 5% makes it all totally worth it. But people will ask that question like, well, why do I have to be a part of the program for a year? And Lyndsey, you pointed it out exactly, because at months 4, 5, 6, and 7, when kind of the motivation runs out and you kind of just don't feel like it anymore, that's when the live meetups and that's when the community really kind of is the most important, because they're going to keep you going. And that's what most people lack is really that support and that accountability. It's not that they don't know that they need a budget, or they don't know they need to save more money, or like you said, they know they should stop keeping up with the Joneses, right? But the reason why it's so easy not to do that is because most of the people around you aren't doing it. So you just kind of fall into what society's doing, and that's only going to keep you broke. And that's why it's so important to surround yourself with people that are like-minded and people who have similar goals as you, and they're working towards those things. And we see that. We'll start a new session in Roots, and we'll have a whole brand new group of people come in, and it's like the whole group gets re-energized, and everyone's ready to go for a new session, and that's what it's all about. So that's really, really interesting that you point that out, because we do talk about that on this show quite a bit. So now I know we mentioned $35,000, but what are the exact numbers that you've saved and paid off since joining in July of 2019?
So for the exact amount saved was $2,700, right around there, and then $35,058.92 in September. And if you ask me, I already have October's budgeted out, so I could tell you by the end of October, because they get paid monthly. October's will be $37,558.
That is incredible. What do you think about when you see that number? Did you, going back like maybe 14 months ago when you joined, would you even have thought that kind of a result would have been possible?
No, to be honest with you. And, it was funny because I got scared, because there are a lot of couples that do join, Roots, and you do, emphasize that, and you have teammates and so forth. And so you have these double incomes that are trying to pay down. And so that's scary. And, in the sense of, here's just me. It's one income. It's only my income. And so what do I do in order to kind of keep myself going with this? What decisions am I going to have to make? But I think in some ways too, being single, it's easier. I don't have to deal with, what are we going to spend on this? And are we going to do this? And, so it's easy and it's hard in the same token, but you just got to keep going, and you got to keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Talk a little bit about your emergency fund. We talked about, obviously paying down that kind of debt, but how nice has it been to be able to have an emergency fund over the past year, especially with everything that's happened with, COVID and just day-to-day life emergencies that pop up? Can you talk a little bit about how stress relieving it's been to have that established and how that's helped you get to where you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's, to be honest with you, it's like, is $1,000 in my mind, because that's what we kind of work with to start with, is $1,000 really going to cover everything that you really need? And, it's funny. So like I can't remember what my first emergency was, and I had to pull some out of there. And, it was one of those things like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad that this was there, because if I didn't, it would have gone back on a credit card. And, once it goes on a credit card, it's like, okay, well, when is that even going to get paid off? Because I live within such paycheck to paycheck as most people do. But now it's so much easier for me, because I have kind of that safety net that's there. I don't try and touch it. I try and want to grow that money. But also too, want to make the decision of like, I look at it and I go, okay, well, there's $2,700 in there. So should I take that 700 and pay it on something else? Or, what should I do? And during this time, I just kind of wanted it to sit there because of COVID, not knowing what was going to happen, with my job or anything like that. And I had been in that situation before. I had been in an unemployment type of a situation. So that gets very scary. And so coming into this whole entire COVID of, am I going to get laid off? Am I going to be furloughed? What's going to happen? It was just that much easier. So like, even if I did, and we did go through a 10% pay cut during 3 months, I still had plenty there to be able to, and I could still cut 10% off, of my budget, and even just kind of bring it back even further. So for me, it's been unbelievable. And I didn't go through it with as much stress as what I thought I would have, especially from the last time being laid off, and then getting those nerves of like, okay, this is going to happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen, but I don't have that savings. And that's what made me work even harder to make sure that I do have that savings and want to push for that, 3 to 6 months. And, in my book, it would probably be a year's worth of savings eventually.
Yeah, right.
Just to make sure that I could stay afloat.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I've talked to that's kind of a new savings goal for them, is going to that 6 to 12 month range now, which is really good. And I think everyone's found out how vulnerable your finances can be during this situation. There's no question. So can you share a little bit about how, mentally speaking, stress speaking, how things are different just 14 months later from when you started versus where you're at now? I mean, are you feeling more confident? Like, can you share a little bit about how you feel just based on what you've been able to accomplish over the last 14 months?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell the confidence is there. People see it. People come up to me and ask me, a couple of times I had told one of my coworkers, I said, hey, I'm going to be on this podcast. I said, please hold all calls, And so they kind of tease me a little bit. And she says, well, wait a minute. She's like, what are you doing? And then it's like the ball starts rolling about, what are you doing? And how about this? And then when you tell them a number and they go, 35,000? And I said, yeah. And they're like, and I said, yeah. I said, you always think about it and you go, I wish I would have started like 10 years ago
Yeah.
and then how much further I would be ahead. But, it happens for a reason. And, so for me, the stress load is not there as much. Obviously, work in itself for me is enough of a stressor, just because of what I do on a regular basis and how many people I have to maintain and carry. But, for every day, like when I come back and I look at my finances, I'm proud. Do I want to do more? Absolutely. Do I want to keep going? Absolutely. When I miss the meetings, I think I've missed a couple meetings here and there just because of scheduling and so forth. And it hurts. It hurts, missing those meetings because it's, regardless if I get something out of the meeting, at least I know I'm there with my fellow peers that are in the same arena as what I am. And we're all fighting for the same thing, to be debt free, and to cheer each other on for our wins.
Yeah, that is so good. And you're absolutely right. That's the point of why we do them. It's not always to teach more. It's really just to kind of, okay, let's get back to what we're working on. What are our goals? Because it's so easy just in day-to-day life, especially with everything that's going on in the world, to have that drift happen. One day of not doing your budget or following your budget turns into 2, and then a week, and then a month, and it's like before you know it, you're right back to where you were. And you're absolutely right. So can you share anything else? I know you mentioned some coworkers and stuff, but what did throughout this process, you mentioned you shared this a little bit with some friends, maybe some family. What were some of their feedback? Like what have they said to you about this? Have they had any pushback or just kind of strange looks or anything like that?
Yeah, so there are strange looks. I do, I'm not probably on the most popular list anymore because a lot of my friends are single, so we do hang out and we don't, tend to go out, and it's, it's not unlike them to call and say, hey, let's go to dinner. And, a couple of times this week it happened, somebody said, hey, let's go to dinner, let's catch up. And I say, I appreciate that I have food here in the refrigerator, it's not going to work for me, but you're more than welcome to stop by the house. So it's different things like that where people just kind of look at you and they go, well, why are you doing this? And, almost like waiting for me to fall off the bandwagon because, and I think that's horrible, but it's so true because it's like, I went to a store the other day with a friend of mine and she goes, I brought you to the store. She's like, because then I wouldn't feel so bad about my purchases.
Oh,
like,
no.
I'm like, why would you say that? And I'm like, I know what my budget is and I know where, but, she's one of them that I'm like, I want to target to say, hey, learn what I'm doing and kind of get on the same path. And, but it's always kind of like that saying, misery loves company. So if I'm going to spend money, I want you to spend money too. And,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the thing that, people need to keep in mind is that it's temporary sacrifice. Eventually you're going to get to the point where you have very little debt or maybe even no debt at all, which would be awesome. And you are going to be able to say yes a lot more than say other people are saying yes right now and they're using debt to pay for some of that stuff. But people lose sight that this isn't like a forever thing. It's really about, okay, I've made some really bad decisions in the past and now I need to own up to those and I need to get myself back on track, pay off this debt. But once that's paid off, it's like, look, we're not about living like hermits for the rest of our lives. We want people to be able to have money to enjoy and do the things that they want to do, just not have to be a slave to it after they have payments for it all, right? So that's the overall goal. And so I think that's fantastic. But I'm glad you shared that because there are some people that we deal with in Roots and that we work with and they do experience that pushback from friends. And then they're wondering like, well, am I the one that's wrong? It's like, no, if people think that you're weird for doing this, it means you're on the right track, right? Because the majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck right now. We want to kind of get away from that. So Lyndsey, if you could kind of go back to 14 months ago before you joined and you mentioned, you were a little bit on the fence, had to do some homework about, what it is that we do here. What would, knowing what you've done and been able to achieve and what you've experienced over the last 14 months, what would you say to the Lyndsey back then? Say somebody's in the same boat that you were in. What would you say to them about what we're all talking about here and what we do here?
Say to them, I probably would smack them upside the head. I mean, in all honesty, like I can't believe, like it did take me a little bit because I think I probably saw you early in the springtime and it did take me a little bit to figure out. But I mean, also too, like the planning as far as like when the classes started, But for me, it was a matter of really kind of looking back and going, gosh, if I had known what I had known, 14 months prior to that, I think about where I would be today now. Maybe it would have been 60, maybe it would have been $70,000 that I had paid off at this point. Maybe I would be sitting here debt free at this point. Who knows? But, I think about it and I go, we all kind of have our own journeys, and we got to jump at some point or another and have some faith, put faith into it and just kind of go with it and see, where does it lead you? If it's not for somebody, then it's not for somebody. But for me, it works, and it works well. I mean, obviously you can tell by numbers, but I would just say do it. I mean, it's one of those things. If you have doubts, come find me. I'll be glad to push you into the class and, smack you upside the head, whatever needs to happen.
Awesome. Couldn't have said it better myself. Such great advice. And seriously, sometimes you just got to do it. You just got to do it. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail forward. But again, Lyndsey, I think your story is proof that even on a single income, and you can do this, you can really make it happen for yourself. And even if debt freedom isn't your overall goal, you just want to get things cleaned up and you just want to feel less stressed, build an emergency fund savings, man, this stuff just works. So, Lyndsey, thanks so much for joining us and hanging out with us here today and sharing your amazing story. Seriously, over the last 14 months, it's been so much fun to have you in Roots, and not only have you in Roots, but also to be able to cheer you on, because this is the best part about my job, is actually being able to celebrate our members and seeing their results and seeing the success and seeing them change over the period of time that they're in this program. And it's just been so much fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I've had a blast being here. So I get excited when it's Tuesdays.
Great story. And if you are still interested in joining Roots Personal Finance is open until this Friday at midnight. Go ahead and click on the link. You can go to rootspersonalfinance.com to get all the information and to join not only Lyndsey, but also hundreds of others who are working their way towards financial freedom. And thanks for hanging out with us here today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our podcast. So please leave us an honest review in Apple Podcasts. We read every single one of those. And as you know, the Debt Free Dad podcast is here to help you live a happier and stress-free financial life. So if you know someone who could benefit from our show, please give us a share. We appreciate you, and we will see you on an upcoming episode of the show. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast. For more free resources to kick debt and financial stress, head over to therealdebtfreedad.com.